And that's the start.
Bang.
We even got a bang out of them, Jared.
Episode 190, Pete.
Not bad. Not
Yep.
bad. We're shooting for 200. Then all of a sudden it's off to the races. It's going to be great.
Well, welcome, folks. It's great to have you here. You're listening to and watching The Rebel's Edge. The Rebel's Edge. He's Pete Najarian. I am John Najarian. Jared is handling all of the dancing bears, bulls, snowboarding bears and bulls. You know, apparently the bull kicking the bear's butt today, as you heard and as you saw. And why not? Because the markets are up pretty strong. Mid-session, we've got a 200-point rally out of the Dow, about a 38-point rally in the NASDAQ, and a 16-point rally in the S&P 500. So the Dow, as it has been doing of late, playing catch-up, up about twice as much as those other two indices. All right, Pete, let's get started with the Macro Minute. Shall we? Macro Minute, I'm going to say today, Pete, that it's going to be about what's going on with the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, as well as, of course, what we're going to be hearing from various Fed speakers. And then we've got the bank earnings at the end of the week. That short, sweet is my Macro Minute.
I like it. I'm going to give you short and sweet as well. Short and sweet was how long we stayed above 4 on the 10-year. We were there for a day or two or three or whatever. And here we are pulling right back down again, John. We were 398 just a little while ago. Last I looked, we were at 3.97, dipping. It's not that far away, but it just does seem to matter. That 4% level is where we suddenly see people turn and say, you know what, sold to that. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on that. I've said it for a while. I'm going to continue to say it. Watch the 10-year. I'm not even saying you got to look at the 10s and 2s, all that stuff. Just keep an eye on the 10-year. When it gets over 4 or back under 4, you see what the markets are doing today.
Exactly right. Well, you also see what the futures are doing today, Pete, with fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
I love them.
So the fantastic futures for Anita and all of our friends over at the CME are percolating higher, especially in the energy space. We told you at the end of the first quarter, energy was the weakest performer in the first half of the year. It's not weak today. It's up by 2.5%, Pete. So crude oil, or WTI, is what my fantastic future is today.
Well, I'm going to piggyback with you, John, because whether it's Anita or Terry Duffy or whoever, from a future standpoint, it is impressive because, you know, we talked about this whole thing. We talked about, you know, OPEC and what they were doing. It starts in July. Well, here we are into July, and we are starting to see it make a little bit of a move each day. It might pull back a little bit, but today, John, we're getting a little bit closer to 75. We got, last I looked, I think it was right around 74.60. And then I look over at Nat Gas as well, because Nat Gas, of course, part of the energy world as well, over 270. It's at the highest levels it's been since going all the way back towards March. So interesting to see how energy is working right now. And when you look across in all the sectors right now, it's energy leading the charge, up about 2% on the day, kind of lifting things up a little bit from the standpoint of the markets themselves.
Well, let's dive into some stocks, Pete, because we've got Zillow. This is a stock that some people absolutely loved, and then it, of course, fell apart. And it fell apart not so much because of missteps on their part, but because interest rates moving up like this meant fewer people were shopping because fewer people could afford homes at that higher interest payment that they'd have to pay. Well, Piper Sandler just raised their estimates for the stock, took the price up to 62, and that was pretty bullish. Double-digit returns so far today, Pete.
Yeah, that was an amazing move, John. I think Piper Sandler is very interesting because they had a $42 price target. Obviously, it's above that already, but they went all the way up to 62. Now we're pushing on the 52-week highs, somewhere just north of 53, and they think it could go even higher than that. Pretty interesting when you really kind of look at things, and you wouldn't expect somebody to say that. But when you look at what's going on with the builders and you look at inventories, you look at all of that, then you come back, you look at Zillow, they've got a pretty unbelievable, when you look at the sheet itself, John, and you just say, all right, how are they looking from a standpoint of cash to debt? Pretty good. How are they looking right now with their free cash flow? Pretty damn good, $1.2 billion. They do have some large shorts in there as well, close to 9 or 10%. That's a little bit of a squeeze. So I could see this thing very easily, John, at some point getting up there closer to 62, maybe a little bit closer than people think. It might not take all that long to get up towards 62.
Pete, when you look at what the recent high was,
Yeah.
I mean, this monster, Zillow, peaked out at about 190, maybe almost $200 a share back in 2021. That ain't that long ago. So to see it down around the lows earlier this year of, let's call it $25, $30, Pete, that is just a tremendous drop. But people are believers again, and Piper is helping them be believers. So that's why it's up double digits. Let's talk about Etsy, because this one's been on a number of most search stocks lists. Whether you go on Twitter or whether you go on Reddit, if you're looking for sentiment, a lot of people are looking for, okay, should I be in Etsy? Well, there are Morningstar analyst, a guy named Sean Dunlop, puts a fair value for the stock at 167, Pete, for Etsy. Wow. Now that's an interesting move, because not a lot of people have that much belief in this stock. That's almost double where it is right now.
It's a hell of a run.
That would be, but it was good for about a 10% rally so far today.
Yeah. Well, John, when you look at Etsy, it's a really interesting product in the first place. But when you look at them, actually, they traded a reasonable PE. You look at a forward PE of something close to maybe call it 25, something like that. And then you start looking through and you see that they do have, some shorts here as well. I bring that up all the time because I think it's important for people to understand with those shorts, when those shorts start to get a little bit nervous, obviously you start feeling a little bit of a squeeze, not right away usually, but at some point when you've got some shorts, you're going to start feeling that. The other thing is this, John, it's sort of trendy. And here's what I mean by that. Folks are looking for what got beat up the most and where they should maybe start looking, because they think that might have the best growth area that they've got. They've already got growth with Etsy. They got beat up pretty badly. And now it seems like, you know what, let's go after some of those worst performers. That's kind of been a theme now for about a month or two for sure, John, where we're seeing a lot of those stocks that just got absolutely crushed. Those are some of the names that people are going after, saying, hey, look, it might not get all the way back to where it was, but it maybe got oversold, and we're going to try to ride this stock.
Yeah, and they don't want to chase the hottest stock. Some people are big momentum traders, Pete, as you and I know, but that takes a whole different skill set, and you've got to roll to stick with it and pull money off the table from your winners and roll up to higher prices if we're talking about upside momentum. We both know that you also get downside momentum, which is usually very quick.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about WD-40. Now, I think a lot of us who have ever worked in a garage and bruised our knuckles, swinging a wrench under a car or whatever, you get a sticky nut and you're sitting there trying to loosen up that nut. Well, you spray some WD-40 on it. Turns out, Pete, they do an awful lot for bicycles and bicycle chains, any kind of lubricants for industrials, and believe it or not, toilets.
Great.
I was looking it up. They have the brand 2000 flushes.
Oh.
So what happens, Pete, is you toss one of these little wafers into your toilet, and it's good for supposedly 2000 flushes, keeping that water nice and blue or whatever color you like. I tell you what, though, as much as I'm poking fun at them, $35 rally, 18% to the upside on a very significant beat means that maybe those 2000 flushes are more like 1500 and people got to buy it more often.
Yeah. Well, John, if you take a look at what they earned last quarter, what they earned this quarter, and they've got this momentum, I think, going in the right direction for them. The stock was up 10% early, then it was up 20%. I mean, they did give you everything you'd want when you want to look through the numbers and the growth and everything that they're doing. they really did crush it. And to your point, it's not just about the little blue and yellow can. They got a lot of other products out there, a lot of other areas where they can reach down. The net income being up about 30%, that's pretty impressive as well. So you could just say, looking at this stock, they beat everywhere. So where is the stock? 52-week highs. This thing has been rocking already, continues to rock, establishing those new highs. Very, very impressive when you see what's going on. And I'll tell you, you don't see a beat like this every single day. And these guys really put out a powerful number today. And that was something I think really has folks kind of scratching their head going, you know what? Maybe there's even more room. You know what? You were just talking about momentum a second ago, John. Well, this thing's got the right kind of mojo going to the upside for sure.
It's been a great run, Pete. And like I say, I make a little fun of the 2000 flushes, but I know products like that are products people buy every single month when they go to the store. And, the fact that they've a lot of flushing and a lot of W.
That's
all right. Let's talk about Shutterstock. This one, SSTK. They basically have image services, Pete, for photographs and illustrations and things like that. If you need that kind of stuff, you go to these guys. But they also have a keyword now, Pete. And I want you to tell everybody what that keyword is, which is why the stock popped 10% today.
I don't know what their keyword is.
Might it be AI?
Well, it's the two letters. I guess it is a word, maybe, or whatever, but artificial intelligence. But yeah, I'll tell you, it is amazing, John. All you've got to do is drop those numbers and all of a sudden, or letters, and people just start going, oh yeah, we're in the right spot. It's truly amazing how fast people have gotten onto that whole thing. You mention AI, and before you know it, the stock's up another 5%. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. But what they've done, John, they got great free cash flow. They do have shorts. But when you look at everything from a growth perspective, this is one of those companies and the partnerships that they're making that really could have something really a lot more left in the tank, I think, for this name. I think they're just getting started. And I think they truly are part of that world. You know, when you get some stocks don't really make a lot of sense for AI, this stock actually does. And so I think this thing's not really done running just yet. I think there's plenty of room still to the upside.
Well, they're the parent company of Chat GPT, which is the first one for most of us that we heard of. Famously, we heard about Bard, which is the one that Google developed, and that sort of had a big whoopsie to start off. I'm sure they'll get Bard right eventually, but OpenAI, they began a partnership with these guys, Pete, in 2021. So Microsoft's been an investor since 2019. Shutterstock began working with them in 2021. And if you're looking for an image that you want to manipulate one way or another with AI, that's a pretty smart move for these guys to be in partnership already. All right. Well, once again, Pete seems to be a little bit of a future seer based on what we saw and what we talked about yesterday, Pete, with the Northwestern coach. A good guy, I think that both of us think is a good guy, Pat Fitzgerald. He brought a winner to a school that hadn't had one in decades.
Right.
And all of a sudden, Northwestern had a great football team. Wasn't a great year last year, but boy, I got to really wonder what kind of year they're going to have this year because they just announced they're firing the coach.
Yeah, it's something that unfortunately, John, based upon a lot of the information, now different information coming from different sources, we both know that makes that whole thing very complicated because, they had some decisions already made up and it seems like the school itself backed away from some of that. Now, that being said, I got to tell you, if you're the athletic director, if you're the president, unfortunately, these are the kinds of things that you just have to literally just say, you know what? Despite your record, coach, and all the great things you've maybe done on the field for football, this off-field thing is really just a little bit too much. That was their decision, not mine. That's just how they decided that they were going to take this direction. By the way, they've only had 5 seasons ever where they had 10 games that they'd won. With Pat Fitzgerald, he's got 3 of them, John. So this guy really did do what they wanted him to do as the football coach on the field, at least. he executed with just unbelievable perfection, because when you got to recruit against Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, all these major schools, and Penn State, throw that in there as well, and still be competitive enough to occasionally be in the Big Ten championship. I mean, he did everything right there. But unfortunately, from the sounds of things, not everything was done right when it came down to what happened on the field or off the field, with some of the guys. And you know what? Everybody can have their opinion on that whole thing. But I think the school, it was just one of those things that was inevitable. They were going to have to make this decision. So here's the question I've got. Here we are, July 11th. You and I are talking about this. They just fired the head coach. What in God's name do you do to replace this guy in time for the season to start? I got 3 names I'll throw out, and I'll let you decide which one of them makes the most sense, John. So David Shaw used to be at Stanford. This guy knows his way around. He's done a lot of great things. Very academic school, obviously. I think after a lot of years and a lot of people wondering if he's going to go to the NFL and all the rest of this stuff, he kind of just walked away. And I think he would be an interesting choice. I think he could be somebody who could step in there and do a great job at Northwestern. Very much the same sort of, at least football sort of personality as Pat Fitzgerald, I'd say. How about Ken Neomatalolo, John, the kid from the young guy from Navy?
Navy, yeah.
Unbelievable what he's accomplished. It's very similar to Northwestern and Stanford, where this, when you're in a Naval Academy and the Army and all the rest of it, Air Force, it's a different deal. That is not the same as being at most colleges. So if you're a winner there and you can get 10 games that you win there, you've done something just absolutely amazing as well. So there's 2 of them. I got a third one. And the third one splits with 2 Wisconsin coaches, John, that I think, you know what? They know the Big Ten. They've been around for a little while. Paul Christ, who got dumped last year, or a year and a half ago, or whatever it was, I think he'd be an interesting choice because he did a great job at Wisconsin, and it surprised people when they fired him. So here's a guy who kind of knows his way around the Big Ten. I mean, if you need a Band-Aid, or you wish you didn't need a Band-Aid, you wish you could get a guy who could just stop the bleeding completely, but you might still at least have a little bit of bleeding here. And I wonder about some of the players that are there, if they're going to jump or do anything else. And the other guy is Jim Leonard, who's also a Wisconsin guy, who also had coached at Wisconsin. And now all of a sudden you've got a different coach there, as it turns out, over the offseason. So what do you think? What's the best direction for Northwestern to take? You're a Chicago guy for a big portion of your life, actually. So you tell me, what do you think?
Overall, Pete, I think that it's really difficult to put somebody in that quickly. Yeah. So I would expect that you're going to see an interim title on whoever they bring in. Now, a logical choice, but logic rarely plays into these decisions, because we both know they're emotional decisions. Yeah. Because what they just did was cost the university 20 or 30 million bucks by firing Fitzgerald after their own investigation found that he had no idea that this particular hazing and Shrek and so forth was going on. But I would say, even though this is difficult, Pete, internally, they've got a coach who was a super winning coach at North Dakota State. He is their D coordinator, rough and tumble guy, but obviously North Dakota State, one of the best programs of that secondary level that puts a lot of guys into the pros. Yeah. So David Braun is that guy that I would expect they might give an interim coaching title to. Now, I do understand, just as you and I discussed before the show, that it's difficult to say if you thought Fitzgerald must have known, in quotes, then you might have to put that same responsibility on all the coaches. On the other hand, the other coaches are so drilled down into just what they do on a day in, day out basis. The head coach, with a few exceptions, there's every once in a while a head coach that is also the O coordinator or whatever. He's calling all the plays and all that stuff. But a lot of times the head coach is just the guy, the puppet master. He's managing all of these people, and they are the one that are so deep in the weeds that they don't go home till 11 o'clock at night, and they're there at 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning or whatever. So I would think that you could look at somebody like Braun and say that he could be that interim coach, but I don't think he would want to stay there, Pete, more than just as the interim, unless they gave him an unbelievable contract, if somehow he was to pull a rabbit out of the hat. But right now, I think Northwestern has written off this season, basically.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think if I were the AD, and I was up for the AD at the University of Minnesota not long ago, a couple of years ago, I think I'd go directly right now. I'd be on the first private jet that Northwestern provides me, and I'd go see David Shaw and say, look, give me 2 to 3 years. That's all I'm asking. Just give me. I know you can set up this team to do well. Doesn't mean we're going to win every game. Doesn't mean we're going to win 3 games. But they barely have won 3 games in the last 2 years anyway. So what the hell? Give it a shot. And I think the guy is, because of that Stanford background, I think it makes so much sense that if you could convince him into it, John, that you could, put together some money and get him on board. And I think that would go well. All right. So next we're going to go to the Summer League. I'm looking at this Summer League basketball. Yesterday, who did you and I talk about? Oh, a guy named Victor Wembanyama, right? 7'3", 225 pounds. First guy in the draft. Everybody's talking about him. He stunk it up in the first game, but in game 2, he had 27 points, all these rebounds, all this, the blocks, everything else. It's great. So what does Popovich do? Now, this guy tanked the season so that he could get him. Let's be honest. Anybody who out there says, no, they didn't. Did you really watch the games? I'd say they tanked. So they tanked the season to get him as the draft pick. Well, that's not so great. Way to go there, Silver. Did it again. Now you've got – so now, John, he's sitting him from the Summer League. He said, you know what? You've had 2 games. That's it. We're all done. You are shut down for the Summer League. So basically – we're doing load management now in the Summer League with these young guys as well. And Pop is just loving what he's doing. I'll tell you, it's just mind-blowing to me. So the hell with that whole conversation anyway. But how about this, John? I got something for you. There are 2 quarterbacks this year in college football that really a lot of people are comparing them to really high-end quarterbacks. So Caleb Williams out there at USC. Pretty damn good player, by the way. But so he had an incredible year last year. Here's what he did. He only threw for 42 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Not so bad. People are all saying he's the next Mahomes because of his athleticism. He throws off, his front foot, his back foot. He doesn't seem to care. He still has great accuracy. And then there's a kid, Drake May, down in North Carolina, who I like a lot. He's a big, strong kid. Goes about 6'4", close to 230 pounds, has a cannon for an arm. Young guy. He was a freshman last year, had 38 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. People say he's the next Joe Burrow. Now, I'm not sure you could say he's the next Joe Burrow just yet, but a lot of people are saying that he has those same kind of qualities as well as Herbert and some of these other bigger quarterbacks. So I guess the question I've got for you is, if you were the first pick in the draft and you needed a quarterback, what direction do you think you'd go? And I'm not saying this guy's Mahomes, other people are, but where would you go? Do you go to Williams, who kind of reminds people of Mahomes, or you're going for the big quarterback who's got the big arm and, he's still very young. So it's, it's kind of a crapshoot, but people think he's Joe Burrow.
You go with Williams because USC and the Heisman. Those are my 2 reasons, Pete. Plays at USC. We know he transferred in with the coach who came from Oklahoma, wasn't it, Pete?
Yep, Oklahoma. Yep.
And the kid, all he did was win except against Utah. Utah owned him. But Utah owned the USC defense because they couldn't stop the Utah offense. Because this kid put up points against Utah, but he could never put up enough because his defense sucked. So he'd be my guy. He's played at the major college level for several years, not just a freshman last year and now, like you say, all this potential. But I like them both. If I had to take either one, I'd be very pleased to take them. But if I have a choice, one versus the other, the one is much more mature, has already proved that, he can uproot, go out from Oklahoma to USC and win. did a classy job, I thought, with the Heisman Award last year.
Yeah.
And he'll be coming in as, the man this year. So he'd be my guy, Pete Williams.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't know how you couldn't make that. I mean, I think it's a tough decision, but I think when it's all said and done, you go with Williams. You're looking at a guy who potentially does have, and if you watch a highlight reel of the kid, he looks and moves around a hell of a lot like Mahomes. It's not like Mahomes is the greatest athlete in the world, by the way. People who think that should watch him when he walks off the field. But when the ball is there, he puts the ball on the money because he doesn't care what his feet are doing, what his shoulders are turned, or anything. He's throwing the ball and he does it like nobody else. So if you've got a guy that you're comparing to him and you're even close, I think you got to take that guy.
Yeah, I think that's a guy that you regret the same way everybody regretted not taking Michael Jordan and taking Ralph Sampson instead or whatever. All right. Well, folks, thanks for joining us. We will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So please tune in then. He's Pete Najarian. I'm John Najarian. Make sure you check out marketrebellion.com/bang for a BOGO deal. Buy one, get one free. It's still going on. Check it out, and we'll see you tomorrow.